need some rain. For those that haven't noticed, they are working on the roof of the fellowship hall. So we're asking that everybody keep away from the dumpster. And also that if you're helping out with Oneg today and taking out trash and stuff, that doesn't go in the commercial dumpster behind the building here, but goes to our regular blue dumpster in the corner so that the workmen can have that space for the roofing stuff that they're having to pull down. So within the next few weeks, we will have a completely remodeled fellowship hall, new floors, new windows, new roof, new paint, new cabinets, new things. So we're grateful for all of those things happening here. Welcome. If you're first time here and you did not receive a visitor's information packet, if you would raise your hand, we will get someone to get one to you quickly. This class is called Foundation of Messianic Judaism. It is an open forum discussion class where you can ask questions about Messianic Judaism, about the Bible, why we do what we do, why we don't do what we don't do, etc., etc. We started this class because we had so many people coming to our congregation from either traditional Judaism trying to figure out how to incorporate Yeshua, from traditional Christianity trying to figure out what from Judaism they need to incorporate, and from other faith backgrounds trying to figure it all out. We wanted to make sure that they got information that was sound and biblically accurate. So we started this class many years ago, and we do it every week at 9 o'clock on Shabbat. So welcome. Prayer requests. Kristen is having a procedure sometime today, so please pray for her. Rebbitzin Zamstein, not Abigail, but Sherry, is in the hospital. She had an intestinal issue, and we're praying for her. The fires in Israel, we want to pray not only that the fires are extinguished, but also that no further ones get started.
Leon broke his hip, it healed, and he re-broke it.
Leon broke his hip, it healed, and he re-broke it.
Had surgery yesterday.
Okay. So please be praying for Leon. Also pray for Rebbitzin, who is having a knee replacement in June. That's several weeks away, but it doesn't hurt to pre-pray. And then in a little less than 2 weeks, I will be flying to Ukraine. So please be praying for that trip as I go to teach at a conference in the Ukraine. Huh? Yeah, for my safety, I would like to be safe. Thank you. Yes.
Salvation for our family members.
Salvation for our family members.
My son Sean is still job hunting.
Sean is job hunting. Crispin. Yes, there was an earthquake yesterday off the coast of Chile. Please pray for all the people there. Other prayer requests. What are you after, young man? Okay. Also, there's lots of other things going on around our country, politically and such. We want to be praying for. So lots of things going on with that. Bobsy?
Pray for the Druze community.
The Druze community, especially those in the Syrian part that are being attacked by Syrians, and the Christians in the areas that are in and around Israel that are being persecuted all the time that we just don't hear anything about. So, yes?
A lot of people don't realize that Israel is protecting them.
Yeah, Israel has been protecting the Druze, not only in Israel, but those in Syria. So be praying for the whole situation there. So anyone else? Yes?
My family, Susie's home.
Susie is home with Dahlia, Bo, and Caleb, all under the weather. So please pray for them to be healed and her to be strengthened. So, Avinu Shabbat our Father in heaven, we thank you so much for your grace and your mercy. We thank you for this Shabbat, this gift that you've given us. Father, help us to totally and completely unwrap this gift and let it be the full blessing in our life that you designed it to be. Abba, we pray for each of these requests that have been shared. Those that need physical healing, we ask that you will do so. Father, those that need spiritual strengthening, we ask that you bring people into their lives to pray with them, pray for them, and encourage them. Father, our nation, the nation Israel, Ukraine, Russia, Chile, all these nations are having different situations around them. We ask that you would bring peace and speak peace into these situations. And Abba, we thank you for all of these things. In Yeshua's name, amen. Whose phone is making all this?
Power off.
I have a hammer in the car. We can take care of this.
Hammer it.
So, okay, good morning. It has been an exciting week. Zoe is doing well. Zoe, she is doing well. She had a concussion from falling off of a horse yesterday. She got the exciting ride on the helicopter from where she was to the hospital. They did scans and things and found that she is a normal young lady, to which we rejoice in that information. And but she does have a concussion, so she is not here. Craig is taking care of all of the females in his family, so pray for him. And Kristen, as I said, having surgery this morning. So, questions? Nobody has any questions. Okay, Don.
The last 2/3 of the half Torah.
Well, you're going to have to be more specific than the last half of the Bible.
Yeah. Well, just the whole, what was it he said? And that's just what happened. So when he was killed at the gates, it's like, tell me, when it says, and that's why this happened, and it's like, I'm lost.
Why? I'm not sure why that loses you. It's the thing happened, and it's why it happened. Are you looking for a deeper spiritual meaning?
No, I'm looking for the why. In that statement. Because I just couldn't wrap my head around. It was a prophecy, I guess.
Okay. I'll have to read it to find out, but I'll have to read the whole half of the Haftorah to find out what you're pointing to. Or you could just give me the actual verses and I'll try to go there. Yes, Crispin?
Perhaps referring to the man who had been told there's going to be blessing and such, and he said, even if God himself did this, it couldn't possibly be, and so you will not see this. And he was tampering the gate, went back in.
Yeah, I mean, the scripture said, that's what I'm saying. The scripture says this is what's happening and this is why it happened. So I'm not sure if he's looking, it's pretty plain text when you read it, that the guy said something and he was responded to and it said, and that's why it happens. But so I'm not sure what, we can talk later and dig into it more, but the text is actually explanatory there, so I'm not sure what you're looking for. Yes, dear?
In 1344.
13, we're going to have to start with the book Leviticus. Okay, thank you. We've done this before, folks. 1344? Okay.
It says that, he is the man with the Pharisee, he is unclean. The Kohen should definitely pronounce him unclean in his plague. Now, that word definitely, we don't see that other places. Why is that there?
The word in Hebrew is the word for utterly, or, it's just a word of emphasis. So that's all he's saying. He said, he's a leprous man, he's unclean, the priest shall declare him utterly unclean. In other words, the priest is saying, stay away, this guy's unclean.
It's definitely.
Yeah, but the Hebrew word is definitely, utterly, it's the same thing. It's like, this guy is unclean, stay away. So it's just giving emphasis to the word. Yes, and you have to remember that Sara'at was contagious. So it wasn't like they touched a pig skin and they were unclean, but we're making sure people stay away from this situation. Tim had his hand up, and then we'll go to Brant.
In Matthew 11, you have someone in prison, and
Yes.
he's asking if Yeshua is the Messiah. Why would he know that? Why is he saying who is this person, and then Yeshua has to respond and tell the people that we tell John, the lame have been healed and the blind, and
But John knows who he is.
John knows who Yeshua is. The question is, does he believe or know that he's the Messiah? We have to remember, like 2/3 of the way through the Gospels, the disciples don't know he's the Messiah. They just know he's this teacher come from God, and there were other teachers that came from God that worked miracles and different things at that time. So this is John. This is my opinion. John is in prison and dealing with depression. He's lived his life the way he's supposed to. He's been righteous. He's done all the good things, and he's in prison. And he's looking at Yeshua in the same way his disciples did. He's going to set up the kingdom on earth. He's going to take Herod and all those people out of power here. We're going to have this righteous world led by him and the Solomonic type and Davidic type restoration going on. But he's in jail, and it doesn't appear like Yeshua is doing much to get him out. And so he sends his word, hey, are you the guy? Are you the one that's going to set up this kingdom? And so that's what's happening here. It's just real humanity playing out as he knows he's done miracles. He knows all these things, but he's like sitting in jail saying, where's my miracle? If you're the guy, why aren't you doing this? And so Yeshua answers him in one of the strongest, and this, by the way, this verse gives me immense faith and trust in God. Because in our lives, there's lots of times I look like we may, and I'm sure there are other people in here that did the right thing. Like a situation came up, they did the right thing, they reported something that was crooked or something that was conniving or something that wasn't supposed to be, and then because they reported it, now they're losing their car, their house, their job, their whatever, and they're looking at it. I lost a job years ago. I was a warehouse manager for Rex TV and Stereo. And they're out of business now, and none of the people are, but anyhow, I was the district warehouse manager. We got a whole shipment of TVs that came in with no bill of lading. And it was during the holiday season when things disappeared all over the place and so the people that were salesmen at the store said, we'll just sell these things and we'll pocket the money because they don't have any record of where it went. And I said, look, first of all, I'm the warehouse guy. Eventually somebody's going to remember where these TVs went to, and I'm going to get, but secondly, we can't do this because it's not the right thing to do. So I reported this happening, did all the paperwork, got it taken care of. They weren't able to sell the TVs under the table and all that. And then weeks later, they drummed up a situation that cost me my job. So here I am doing the right thing, taking care of all this, and I lose my job, and these guys are still working there. And so you look at the Lord, well, why, here I'm the righteous guy trying to do the righteous thing, and they're prospering, and here I'm losing my job and all this. But this blessed is the one who's not led to stumble because of me. Or another version says, blessed is the one who's not easily offended in me. Is one of the reasons that I still have faith, is that sometimes bad things happen to good people, and that shouldn't cause us to doubt who God is. And so basically Yeshua is telling his cousin, yes, I'm the Messiah, look at these things, this is proof, and you're going to die. And don't be offended by that truth. It's like a real strong statement, but it's one that I don't know how many other people take like comfort in discomfort, because we still can trust God even when things seem to. Now, the whole situation with the job, Rex went out of business, Circuit City took them over. They all lost their jobs. I got a better job because everybody wasn't looking for jobs at the same time. It worked around to my blessing and benefit, but initially it was a terrible situation for me. So, but I can look back at it and see God's hand protecting me from all of the kind of things that could have happened.
Quick follow-up. In that same section, Yeshua says he's Elijah. Is that
Well, it actually says he comes in the spirit of Elijah, but he also says, because they ask him, don't the sages say Elijah's going to come? And he says, surely he will come. So he doesn't say that John the Baptist is Elijah. He says, surely Elijah will come, but if you had paid attention, John was serving the function of Elijah. So both are true. So.
I always took it to mean that he was Elijah, John the Baptist.
No, it says he came in the spirit of. Yeah, I'm looking for it now. Okay, from the days of John the Immerser, now the kingdom of heaven is treated with violence. For all the prophets of the Torah prophesied until the time of John. Are you willing to accept it? He is Elijah who will come. He who has an ear, let him hear. So it's he is Elijah who is to come. So Elijah, and the other, I think it's Luke says the actual full statement of Elijah will come, and he came in the function or role of Elijah. So it's both saying the same thing different ways. Brent?
Okay, so we have Romans 13, and we also have 1 Peter 2, yeah, where it's discussing how you're supposed to look at government.
Yes.
And so if you're dealing with situations like how our country got started along with other countries that basically shirked the monarchy and went to a democratic society.
Okay.
So how are we supposed to square that circle dealing with those verses and dealing with
Okay, there's a great question. The question is about government authority, and he's talking about Romans in Romans 13, where it says to obey them that have rule over you and so on. That's in there. How do we square that with things like the United States started from rebellion? And the bottom line is, when we're reading the book of Romans, we have to understand that Paul is not talking about the Roman government. He's talking about the synagogal government and the temple government in what he's talking about. And the whole, if you read it in context, and I encourage you, not on Shabbat, but by my book, Romans in Context, because I go into this in that. But it's talking about, should the believers support, through temple taxes and such, the leadership in Israel that's running the temple. And that's the context of what he's talking about. He is not talking about, because I heard people all the time talking about the vaccination, which wasn't really a vaccination, and all of those things. And the government said to do it, and we have to obey the rule of the government. No, it wasn't talking about that. It was talking about religious leaders in Jerusalem. And basically Paul's saying, even though we are believers in Yeshua, we are still under the authority of God who's established the temple and the temple priesthood and all that. And yes, you should still support the temple, even though they are not believers yet in Yeshua. So that's what's going on there. It doesn't have anything to do with America or Roman government or any of that. It's strictly speaking to the leadership in the Jewish community based out of Israel. Yes?
Follow up to that, would that have legitimacy? When people want to say, oh, but the temple was corrupt, the priesthood, even in that context, they're saying, you still got to follow that leadership.
Peter and John and Paul, at the risk of death, as a believer, traversed the ocean to get back to the temple, which was run by corrupt people, so that he could do the sacrifices and offerings that God commanded him to do. So that should answer the question, how do we view things like this? He did. Peter and John went to the temple at the hour of prayer. All of these things are really important to look at, because up until the destruction of the temple, all of the believers continued to honor the Levites and the priests that served in the temple. Brant?
So it's basically like maintaining the system. You may not have to agree with the leadership, but maintain the system.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
Looking at the book of James, chapter 4, verses 4 and 5, talking about, that friendship with the world is hostility towards God. Therefore, whoever chooses to be a friend of the world renders himself an enemy of God. Can you give a definition?
That's James chapter 4.
Yep. 4 and 5.
Okay, don't you know that friendship with the world is enmity to God? Therefore, whoever wishes to be a friend of the world makes him an enemy of God.
So what is friendship with the world or worldliness? How would you understand that?
This would be, I think that some of this is answered in verses like, don't be yoked together with unbelievers in how we do things in business and things like that. I think some of this has to do with some of the worldly things that people promote, even if they're trying to promote godly kind of consequence. In other words, you can't blend righteousness and unrighteousness in trying to achieve God's plan. That we need to distinguish between what is righteousness, even in the sense of understanding that a little leaven leavens the whole thing.
So, going on with that, realizing when this was written, we're not talking, or in that context, he's not pointing out specific things that obviously are in our world today that were not even
Right.
And yet they were still combating worldliness in that day.
Oh, absolutely. We have not created.
You didn't have to have a
Right.
computer.
It had to do with. We had prostitution then. They had drugs and alcoholism then. They had ungodliness in politics and things then. They had ungodliness in religious settings then. They had all kinds of things that went on. Part of this is, don't eat foods offered to idols. And that whole kind of concept is that they were debating, okay, I know this idol isn't really anything but a piece of wood or a piece of stone. This meat is going to go to waste. Why not just eat it? And this discussion of, and the same reason why I don't eat halal at halal restaurants and why I don't eat at Chinese restaurants that have shrines in them and stuff. Because I don't want to cross that line of blending and trying to justify, well, I know there's no Buddha, so it does that, and those are true statements, but the hurt that can be caused by your doing those things to weaker vessels, which is in Romans the whole discussion, people who are weak in the faith can cause problems. So there's things I don't do. I don't go to the beach. Now I go to private beaches if I can get to one where there's nobody around, but people forget to get dressed when they go to the beach. And if I'm at the beach and I'm just sitting there reading my book and some girls walk by in cellophane and somebody sees me and just at that moment a seagull cries, and I look up from my book to see the seagull, and here's these 5 girls in cellophane bikinis, they're going to think I'm staring at that girl, and that hurts my testimony. So I just avoid things like that I can keep from having in my world. And part of that is because I'm a rabbi, because people look at me as they shouldn't look at me as obligated to be higher in what I do, but they do. And so I avoid things like that. But yes.
I didn't mean to interrupt. My question is this. You mentioned about how they have to respect the leadership in the synagogue, in the temple, amongst the Levites. But in 1 Peter 2:17 it says, be respectful to all, keep loving the brotherhood, fearing God, honoring the emperor. The emperors were evil men.
Again, Yeshua told them to pay taxes to the Romans. Okay, so we're dealing with different things here. I'm not telling us that if the U.S. got, for instance, let me give you a good example from years ago now. I can't believe it's been so long since COVID. It's just crazy that, I think, oh, that was weeks ago, but that's been years ago. When the county came out and the city came out and said, look, we don't know what's going on. We're at a loss. We're asking for everybody to just not meet in groups for 2 weeks so that we can figure this stuff out. I got with our leadership and I said, look, our city, they're not demanding it. They aren't telling us we can't. But let's use common sense and respect the leaders of our community. And we did. For 2 weeks we closed down. in 2 weeks, they opened up restaurants at 25% and bars at 25% and adult entertainment establishes at 25% off. So we started having service again because if they could have 25%, then we were going to do. And so, but that wasn't disrespecting the government. But if the government asked me to do weddings for gay couples, that violates the Torah. We're not doing that. So something that's just like we want to protect our community, can we all just not get together in large groups for 2 weeks? That's not a huge deal. If they had come out and said, we're going to let bars and this be open, but churches can't be and synagogues can't be, we'd have been open, regardless of what the government said. But those are the things. You respect the government in as far as they don't ask you to do something that violates Torah. But when it came to the Romans verses, that's specifically talking about the money that was collected to pay temple tax in Jerusalem. And that's a different subject from obeying the Roman government in what's going on. So context really does feed into that. Yes, sir.
I know that the word synagogue doesn't mean like just Jewish or, that's the verse in Revelation, the church of Satan. What were they doing so bad that was like they were called Church of Satan?
Or synagogue of Satan.
The text actually tells you. They were saying they were Jewish when they weren't. The context of the verse tells you these are people pretending to be Jews that aren't Jews, and they're the synagogue of Satan. It is not talking about Jews being the synagogue of Satan. There's actual context to that verse. It's interesting that that verse is translated synagogue of Satan there, but other places the same word is used. When it's positive light, it doesn't use the word synagogue in English translations.
And because there is these people saying that they were Jews, but they were not, and then like this is like a big deal, like being called synagogue of Satan. Are other, like in the history, so many people they became like the Jewish, like they're Jews, but they were not, and they were because of their, like I'm talking about the Middle Ages to before the World Wars and stuff. Were also these type of people doing that?
I'm not sure what exactly you're asking, but in this particular case, these people were teaching things that were contrary to God's word and claiming to be Jews and therefore have the ability to give and teach and establish halakha. And the writer is saying these people are the synagogue of Satan. They're leading people away from God's word and what God's word said. This wasn't just people who said, I think I'm Jewish, yes.
So this is to Smyrna, and he's commending them for some things and then criticizing them for other things. But it's not necessarily that the synagogue of Satan is at Smyrna. It could be this group is something.
Right. That's what I'm saying. This is not specific. It doesn't tell us specifically who they're talking about, just what they're doing. In other words, if somebody were to open a synagogue in Pensacola and claim to be Messianic synagogue and claim to be teaching what God taught, claim to be Judaism, and we're just going to use the word Judaism because that's the context of this going on, but they were teaching things that the Bible taught against. And they were teaching things like that abortion was God's plan for saving the planet. And they were, all kinds of things that are anti-Bible. We could say they're the synagogue of Satan because Satan's deception is what's ruling what they're doing. So that's the kind of context what's going on here.
But people frequently use that.
Oh yeah, people use that all the time to say the Jews are Satan. It's a lot of verses like that that are used to say, and there's a lot of this right now on the internet because there's these pastors who are preaching things like, if you do Passover during Passover, if you actually celebrate Passover, you're of the synagogue of Satan because God's through with the Jews and you're re-crucifying Christ all over again and all this kind of stuff. This is that kind of nonsense that they're talking about. Yes?
What about they call themselves Jewish, but they're like doing horrible, amazing, crazy stuff that you cannot even talk about, like in Hollywood and other places.
Being Jewish doesn't mean you're righteous. Just like you're from Brazil. Okay, so not everybody in Brazil is a good guy. There are people in Brazil that are horrible people. But you wouldn't say they weren't Brazilian. Jewishness is both an ethnicity and a faith. So Herod was a Jew, Herod the Great, but he was a horrible person. His genealogy doesn't change because he became a horrible person. So those are different things we're talking about. There are evil Jews all over the place. There's also good Jews all over the place. So we don't say somebody's not Jewish because they did something wrong. We say they're being unrighteous or unbiblical, or, easy term, they're sinning. And so that's important to distinguish. Anna?
I know that for that time period, it's a million miles away, it's 500 miles away, but you have like the sect that establishes themselves in Qumran, who set up their own system, set up their own sacrifices, all
Right.
different stuff, their own stuff. They're departing from the temple.
Yes.
Even though, as we said, Paul and everyone else is still going there and risked his life to go
Right.
there. In our day, we have the black
The Hebrew Israelites, black Hebrew
that
Israelites.
deny that anyone Jewish is really Jewish. That
Right.
They're the real Jews. So we've had the groups throughout history.
Exactly.
Who
And then in Israel itself, with the dividing of the tribes, we had the northern kingdom that established 5 cities with their own temples and wouldn't let their people go to Jerusalem to sacrifice. So this is not new stuff. But that doesn't... Your genealogy and your genetics don't change because your actions change. But if somebody who's not... I'm trying to find somebody that... Who in here is absolutely positive you have no Jewish blood? Okay, so Ron has no Jewish blood. So if Ron was just to start saying, I'm Jewish, God told me so, and then he started a whole religious system that he called Judaism that doesn't follow the Bible, then he would be one of these people that says he's Jewish but isn't, and this. And you have to remember, listen, the context of this is important. Judaism was infecting the world. So much so that Rome actually passed laws to stop and get Jews out of Rome. Judaism, in Messianic Judaism predominantly, was spreading all over the globe, and nations were rising up, like these pagan nations were rising up and kicking Jews out because they didn't want them to impact their world. So calling yourself a Jew gave additional gravitas religiously because people were trying to find out who's what, which is why, for instance, some people in the Hebrew roots world we have to stay careful of because they teach something as if it was taught in Judaism that's not. But people look at them and say, oh, they must know because they do this and this and this. So we really have to be careful about that. And Messianic Judaism the same way. There are people that claim to be Messianic Jewish that I wouldn't go anywhere near because their teaching is so horrendous and bad and unbiblical. But because they call themselves a Messianic Jew, suddenly they become an expert and people start following them and they get led into ungodliness and unrighteousness. So, is there an adult outside with... We need to really not have any of our children outside of the building without an adult with them. Just for safety's sake, we live in a world in which children unfortunately aren't safe all the time, and we are a synagogue, and therefore there's additional concerns. Yes?
So, Rabbi, last week in your teaching, your lecture outside, it was wonderful when you did about the fear of God and what we do with the presence of God. There is always an apologist attitude when we have to teach in the fear of God. So I'm glad you addressed it last week and said, this God that we serve, fear of God is a part of our worship all through. Ezekiel, Isaiah, he says, you fear me, even you Yeshua said, fear nothing else but he who can cast your thing into hell.
Yes.
Into hell. Okay? So, at the presence of God, he says, I honor those who tremble before me. In this culture, in this age, in this country, you are taught to fear nothing. And every time a preacher tries to teach about the fear of God, people are like, we're not supposed to be afraid of him. He contracts, like we whisper.
Okay, so are you getting to a question?
No, the question is, and he expands, how do we, can you teach the difference between the fear of God and the spirit of fear that he talks about that is a curse in Deuteronomy 20?
I can, and to...
It's a coffee matter, right?
Well, no, I was going to say I actually wrote a book on that topic that I encourage. And I'm not trying to sell it. If anybody emails me, I'll send you a digital copy of it. But it's dealing with that and my personal struggle. It's my testimony of when I was 38, I was a believer. I was leading 5 congregations from Slidell, Louisiana to Pensacola. 5 of my friends, very close friends, all 38 years old, died within 6 months. And I was absolutely oppressed by fear. Like I was driving from Mobile to Louisiana, from Mobile to Pensacola, from Mobile. I was doing outwardly all the things leading a congregation, but unless I had to actually be somewhere to teach, I didn't leave my house for fear I was going to die. I was under such intense bondage because I was 30, and add to that, my father died when he was 38. So all of this happened all at once, and I had to get deliverance from God, study and come to terms with the reality of the difference between the fear of God and fear of this world and the things of this world. And so I wrote a book sharing that. And it's a very short book, but I would encourage everybody, like I said, email me, I'll send you a digital copy. I'm not trying to, it's only $1.50 online, so I'm not trying to get rich by it. Oh, overcoming fearlessness. We live in a society that wants to overcome fear.
Yes.
And so everybody says, don't fear, be fearless. And I think that we need to understand as believers that there is fear we should hold to and understand that God, the creator of the universe who spoke this world into existence, is someone to be feared and loved. And understand that when it says, don't fear the one that can destroy the body, but fear the one soul, it's talking about God and telling us to tremble at his presence. And unfortunately, the believing world has taken that fear and diminished it and said, oh, we're not supposed to be afraid of God. We're just supposed to respect and have awe for his presence. And we're supposed to have awe for his presence. The reality is, if the King of the universe entered this room right now, like if angels sounded trumpets and the heavens opened up and this really cool cloud staircase came down, and he walked off the staircase and a carpet rolled out in front of him, and he walked into the tune of the angels singing, walked in the room, every one of us would rise in awe of his presence. But I guarantee we would then get on the floor in fear of the creator of the universe. So you can have awe and understand his might and his power and his amazing love and grace and all those things, but don't shy away from the fear that he is the judge who is going to judge us. And that's really important. So thank you for bringing that up. But I do, again, if you want the book, just email me. I'll send you a PDF of it. Or you can, after Shabbat, just buy it online for $1.49 or whatever it is. I wrote it because this was such a real thing to me. And just a short story, my very first memory when I was 1.5 years old was the assassination of Kennedy. I vividly remember the fear that came on my mother as she sat in the room with me when the president was assassinated in Texas, and the whole world went into a fear and what is going to happen now. And because large group of the world was looking at John F. Kennedy as almost a messianic figure at that time. And so I remember, and that one memory was the root to all of the fear of my life. And what was crazy is I did things like skydiving and jumping motorcycles and, hunting alligators and all kinds of things that I would do just to overcome fear, because I lived with such fear. I had to almost pretend not to be afraid of things to prove to everyone. Like, I overcompensated on doing things that other people would be afraid of just to try to put a check on the fear that ruled me. And good morning, ladies. And Josh, didn't want to leave you out. So anyhow, there's all that went into that, and God had to deliver me of sinful fear, but also restore in me the right fear of God and understanding how that is. So we have 3 minutes. Is there a 3-minute question out there? No, I have the clock and the thing. That clock's not right. It never is. Timothy?
I don't know how you can do this, but you wrote a really good post in the last couple of weeks about the anti-Semitic, and then you explained Jewishness and
The history of Jews?
Yeah, I don't know if you could.
I can pull it up and read it.
I thought it was excellent, and when we're in the context of Jews doing things that are positive, negative.
Let me see if I can.
Anti-Semitic attitudes. I thought that was.
Let me see if I can find it real quick. And if I can, I'll just read it.
All right.
And I wish, honestly, that I had written it, but I copied it from somebody else because it was such a powerfully well said statement. By the way, everybody say happy anniversary to Jonathan and Catherine, who I hope are off on a weekend celebrating their anniversary and not watching this. As they can watch it later when they're driving home, but I hope they are not. Like, let's get up and watch service this morning. Wow, I write too much posts on Facebook. Okay, found it. Okay, so I'm just going to read this through, and if you want a copy of it again, you can email me and I'll send it to you, or you can look at my Facebook. The story of the Jewish people. You say we run the banks. You say we control Hollywood. You say we dominate the media. You say we have too much influence, too much power, and too much pride. But you never ask how or why, so let me tell you. We were banned from owning land, so we learned to live by our minds. We were blocked from trade guilds and profession, so we became merchants and scholars, doctors and lawyers. Our commitment to education didn't come from privilege, it came from necessity, from exclusion, and from survival. When we were barred from universities, we built our own yeshivot. The Torah became our moral anchor, the Talmud our intellectual training ground. When we were mocked for being bookish, we made knowledge our defense. The insult became our honor. In medieval Europe, Christians were forbidden by the church to lend money with interest, but kings still needed loans and someone had to do the collecting, so they turned to the Jews, already despised, already othered. We became money lenders, not by ambition, but by force. Then we were hated for it. In America, we were shut out of respectable jobs, so we went to the West and helped invent Hollywood, not to brainwash, but to dream, to tell stories, to make magic. When Ivy League schools capped Jewish admissions, we founded Brandeis. When hospitals wouldn't hire Jewish doctors, we built Cedars-Sinai. When law firms closed their doors, we opened Skadden and Wachel. We weren't trying to dominate, we were just trying to live. We were expelled from Spain, massacred in Poland, hung in Iran, lynched in Germany and Georgia, bombed in Germany, yet we survived, we learned, and we remembered. In 1948, the world watched as nearly 1 million Jews were expelled and fled Arab lands. Their homes, businesses, and synagogues were seized or burned. There were no refugee camps, no UN agencies, no worldwide calls for justice, no right of return of the Jews for Baghdad, Aleppo, and Tripoli. You say we're tribal. We tried to integrate. We changed our names, straightened our curls, abandoned our faith, but every time we tried to disappear, you reminded us who we were. So we turned inward. We leaned on each other, built synagogues when yours were closed to us, built hospitals when we weren't welcomed at yours, built advocacy groups to defend ourselves when no one else would. And when no country would have us, we built our own. Then came October 7th, 2023. You say you hate Israel because of its policies, because of land, because of borders. But on October 7th, Hamas didn't target soldiers. They didn't storm checkpoints or military outposts. They raped women, beheaded babies, and burnt families alive. They slaughtered civilians in their homes, bombed shelters, and at a music festival. It was the worst massacre of Jews since the Holocaust, and as our dead laid unburied, the world didn't mourn with us, they rallied against us. College students held glory to the martyrs signs. Protesters waved swastikas in Sydney and gassed the Jews was graffitied in Berlin. Students were barricaded inside libraries in New York. MIT students were blocked from class. At Harvard, they were told to remove their Stars of David for safety, all while our hostages were still bleeding in tunnels. So no, this isn't about borders. You hated us before 1948, before the state of Israel existed, before a single border was drawn. What you hate is that the Jew now has power, a flag, a standing army, a government, a home. You preferred when we were weak and wandering, apologizing, dependent on your pity or permission to live. Israel is not a gift, it's a necessity. We didn't colonize the land, we returned to it. Jews have lived in Jerusalem, Hebron, Safed, and Siberia for over 3,000 years. We prayed toward Zion for centuries. We spoke Hebrew while the world told us to forget. We made desert bloom. We drained swamps, planted forests, revived a lost language. We welcomed Holocaust survivors, Russian refugees, and Ethiopian Jews airlifted from famine. We built a nation while surrounded by enemies, embargoed by the world, and haunted by the ashes of Auschwitz. Israel was not built because of the Holocaust. It was built because of 2,000 years of exile, genocide, and betrayal. And is the only insurance policy against the next one. Never again isn't a slogan. It's the Iron Dome. It's the F-35. It's the 18-year-old girl in olive green standing guard so toddlers in Sderot can sleep. Why the double standard? When Russia invaded Ukraine, the world cried out. Blue and yellow flags adorned every profile. Weapons, refugee aid, solidarity, all offered rightly. But when Hamas burned Israeli children alive, we were told to de-escalate. When we defend our cities, we're called monsters. When we bury our dead, you protest our grief. Why? Peace is possible. We've tried. You say Jews are foreigners in the Middle East, but the UAE, Bahrain, Morocco, Sudan disagree. The Abraham Accord proves peace isn't just possible, it's real. Israel sends aid to Syrian earthquake victims. Arab doctors and lawmakers serve in the Israeli Knesset. We seek coexistence, and you chant from the river to the sea. We chose life, you chant death. So yes, Israel is now strong. And thank God for that. Because a powerless Jew is a dead Jew. And history taught us no king, no pope, no president will save us. We don't want to dominate, we just want to live. Freely, proudly, and unapologetically. You don't have to like us, you don't have to agree with us, but never again will you decide whether we're allowed to exist. I have no idea who wrote it. I saw it online, and it was meaningful, so I copied it, pasted it, and said, I didn't write this, but I wish I had. We're going to take a break for 15.